Hi, my name is Kat, or the Free Librarian, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to talk about my top 10 reads of 2024. I'm gonna say like the same caveats that everyone gives. I rank these, but you know, if I would film this video on a different day, it would be ranked differently. Picking favorites is hard, but I have ranked these. I also have one honorable mention. I don't like giving honorable mentions in this video. I like to keep it pretty strict to the top 10. There's one author that I discovered this year, and I really liked her books. I read a couple, but none of the books individually, I think, should be in the top 10. But I think it also felt wrong to not mention her as an author, and that is Janice Hallett. I read The Mysterious Gates of the Albertan Angels in January, The Twyford Code in February, and then The Examiner in December, which means that I've read everything on her backlist except for The Appeal, which I plan to read in 2025. So, she just is very intentional with what she writes, and even if there are elements that throughout the book I don't love, because she does a lot of mixed media and she tries new things with it, and even if I don't love them while I'm reading them, at the end I understand why she included them, and I just end up being very impressed. Please excuse my scarf, it's cold. But so yeah, that is especially true in The Mysterious Gates of the Albertan Angels and The Twyford Code. I think The Examiner isn't her strongest work in that regard. It's my least favorite of the three, but I still quite enjoyed it. So yeah, I really like it. She has these mysteries that, truly, she wants you as a reader to be able to figure it out. Like, she doesn't do a twist that you would never see coming. I feel like everything makes very much sense. And even if there's something that you didn't guess beforehand, you're like, of course it's this. That's more the reaction. But yeah, I like her books, and I'm going to continue reading her books. So let's get into the actual top 10. On number 10, I have Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. This is the third, fourth, somewhere there, book in the Discworld series, the first book in the Witches sub-series. I liked it. Which is why it's in my top 10. I wouldn't be in my top 10 if I didn't, kind of redundant. But I'm working my way through Discworld implication order. And I have never disliked one of the Discworld books. I always had a pretty good time, but this is the book where I really started to see why people love this series so much. I thought it was funny. I liked the commentary. Also, just the overall vibe felt very cozy to me and very familiar, which was really great. And just overall, I really like this book. I read it in a single day, which was great. So yeah, I can see why people love Discworld now, and or why Tara Pratchett is some people's favorite author. So I definitely want to get back into Discworld because I kind of fell off. But yeah, this is great. Then on number 9, I have A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Sarah J. Maas, she's not really a hit or miss author. She's more like a hit or meh author. She has, I have never actively disliked one of her books, and I don't think her books are actively bad, but there are some that were just very eh. But not this one. This is my favorite by her so far. It's the second book in the ACOTAR series. And it's just, you know, there's some found family in this, just some, like, a lot of, like, just very slow moments between the characters. Well, there also is plot. It's not just filler and middle book syndrome. There is definitely plot, but also just the interpersonal relationships in this one are beautiful. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's just, it was good. It it's a good book. What else could I say? Yeah, this one is definitely, I think that the first one is like romantasy. I think that this one is romance in a fantasy world, and I think that the third one is fantasy with romance. That's how sort of the which genre of the two is like heavier in both. I think like the first one has a pretty even divide in terms of how important it is for the story, and then this one romance is more important, and then the third one a fantasy. But yeah, I really liked this. I like the series too. But yeah, I don't love all of Sarah J. Maas's books. I don't love all the books in this series. But this one was great. Then I read The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, which is my first ever Robert Jackson Bennett. I realized that I haven't really mentioned what these books are about, but I think like with Discworld and with ACOTAR, like you probably either you know or like you don't need to know. But The Tainted Cup, it's a mystery book set in a fantasy world. I'm still kind of mad that for the Goodreads Choice Awards, this was in fantasy and not a mystery, because I think that it's more, I think it's a mystery first, and a fantasy second. But I really liked it. So we follow these two people that are very like Sherlock and Watson vibes, as they try to solve a mystery of this guy who suddenly had a tree growing out of places that you really don't want a tree growing out of. And then, so that's how it starts. That case gets solved fairly quickly, but then things, you know, go from there, and we get into like a much larger, like newer mystery in a larger scope, political scope as well. But that also ties in to the mystery at the beginning. I mostly loved the world building. I would almost say it is kind of sci-fi, because it's about genetically modifying plants, but also people, to do certain things, to be able to certain things, to have certain features. And yeah, I just really liked the world building. I could feel like the humidity and the stickiness that, you know, was in there. I had a very clear image of this world. It is very fast paced, which I was struggling with at the beginning, but then either I got better or I got used to it. And so yeah, I read this so quickly. It's so compulsively readable too. I'm really looking forward to the second book, which comes out at the beginning of April. So, and this is probably, out of every book I've read this year, this is probably the one that has stuck with me the most. So, highly recommend. Then on number 7, I have About a Gnome by Jeff McIntyre. This is the prequel short story to The Garden Gnome, which was on my top 10 of 2023. And it's just a delightful story, and every time I think about it, I start smiling. And so he wrote a prequel short story to it, which I thought was great. It sort of falls in like a mythology retelling category where different elements from different mythologies are sort of woven together. And we see where like the gnomes, how they came into existence, and as well as some other mythical creatures. And I really liked it. This one you could get for free if you sign up to his newsletter. So yeah, it is very different from the garden gnome, but it was really good. Yeah, I should probably reread it at some point. But yeah, this was great. Then on number 6, I have Raven 1 by Miriam Borgermans, which is a Belgian YA dystopian story. I haven't been able to find an English translation of this, unfortunately, but I read it in Dutch, and I have this whole copy here. I can actually hold it up. There it is. I had read this before when I was a teenager. I think it was like 15, 16, somewhere there, when I read this for the first time, and I really liked it then. I've read the second book, but I haven't read more in the series. But I decided to reread this one, see if it holds up, which I was kind of nervous for, but actually it holds up so much better than I thought. This world building is great. So we're basically in a future where, you know, due to the economy collapsing and whatever, slavery is a thing again because people couldn't pay their bills anymore and decided to sell themselves in order to be able to eat. And the government, which exists of just business owners, is like a council of like the wealthiest, most like successful business owners. They were like, sure, you can work for free for me. So it's like this whole system now, and we follow Raven, who is a slave, and which is a special kind of slave, where she's not meant to like do actual work. She's from a class of slaves that are meant to like status symbols, to like show how wealthy people are, because like they can afford one of these, and they don't even like have to do work or anything. So, you know, but then she like has been sold to this person, and like I think like the day after or a few days after that, this person ends up murdered and she gets accused. And so we go from there. It is really good at the world building. I fully believe that things could go in this direction, which is scary. But like I fully believe that this is plausible with how the world currently is, and the direction the world is heading in. So yeah, I thought that this was really good. It is, how many pages is this? Hang on. It's like a little under 500 pages, and I wrote this in 2 sittings. If that gives you an indication. I was really into this. I am planning to read the second and third book in January. I'm not going to be able to because my reading has slowed down a lot. But that's my plan. So, yeah. Highly recommend if you're able to read this. I mean, if you speak a language that this book exists in. Because as I said, I don't think I've seen an English version of it. Then on number 5, I have a series, because I read all the books that are out currently in that series in 2024, and I think they were all great. And so they just have one spot, and that is the Singing Hill Cycle by Niveau. The first one is the Empress of Salt and Fortune. I think if I would have to rank them, I would go with the first book, which is Mammoth at the Gate first, then the first book, The Empress of Salt and Fortune, then the second book, which is When a Tiger Came Down the Mountain, then the fifth book, which is The Rise of a Hill, and then the third book, which is Into the Riverlands. But they're all really good. They follow, each of them follows the same main character, Cleric Chi, as they travel around this Asian-inspired fantasy world to collect stories. And so each of the books, or the novellas actually, centers around storytelling in some sort of way. And they're all very different from each other, and they all deal with it in a very different way. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really looking forward to the sixth one, which is going to be released in 2025. Because this series is great. Highly recommend if you haven't read it. And their novellas didn't take very long. So yeah, Singing Hill Cycle by Nebo. Then on number 4, I have Anathem by Neil Stevenson. This is a sci-fi book where in this world there are these they're like monastery type things, except not for religion, for like research and philosophy and, you know, knowledge, smart people thingies. And they are separated from modern society, so they don't have distractions and whatever. And some of them open their doors once a year, some of them once every 10 years, some every 100 years, and some once every 1,000 years. And so we follow this person in one of the monasteries. It starts off with like the day that his one opens. He lives in one, like, does it every 10 years. And this is the day, this is the first time that he, you know, is going to go outside in this way, since he is in, or since he entered the thing. And yeah, it's all nice and good, but not long after that, something happens that I'm not going to spoil, which sort of turns everything, the whole world upside down. And we, you know, follow that. It's hard to describe entirely, or to summarize the full thing in a few sentences. But it deals with philosophy a lot. Like, it's not very original in its philosophy. It's more like, but like as you read it and you know a bit about philosophy, you can recognize like, oh, this is this philosopher and this is this theory from this dude, which I thought was very fun because I'm very interested in philosophy. Already, like, for a very long time. I had a philosophy phase when I was a teenager, when I thought like I knew a lot about philosophy and I was good at it and stuff. It's embarrassing. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. There was a part in the middle where plot was happening and I was like, no, can we go back to like the useless philosophy? Thank you. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was very much a me book. It was great. I loved it. Thank you to the person who recommended it to me. Yeah, it's super long though. I was very intimidated, but I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's Anthem. Then for my top three, on number three, I have Orpheus Builds a Girl by Heather Parry. This is a literary sci-fi, historical fiction, retelling, psychological thriller, uh, basically name a genre and it's in here. There's some horror elements too, like there's some body horror at some point. Um, but so it's a retelling of the myth of Oedipus, meets a bit of like Frankenstein in there as well. Um, so we um, have this doctor who falls in love slash gets very obsessed, mostly the second one actually, with one of his patients who he believes is his promised bride and like the person that he's supposed to end up with in the end. Um, what this woman thinks of that is not important, of course. And we should see him just be very creepy about it, and be really problematic about it. And yeah, it's very uncomfortable to read. So we get his POV. We also get the POV from the patient's sister, um, who tells a very different story of like this doctor not wanting to leave her sister alone, not even after the sister has died from the disease that the doctor was treating her for. Even then, he could not leave her alone. Um, and it's just, it's so, I think it's a very interesting choice narratively to have those POVs, but the POV of the patient herself, we don't have. I believe the name was it Luciana? I think that was the name. Um, so I think that was very interesting, very hard to read. At sometimes I nearly cried. I think it was the closest to crying I came this year while reading a book. Um, just and then we have like the general public thinking that they understand what is going on and like getting involved with it, which of course they are. Um, of course, people react in this way. Um, they always do. And just, yeah, it's very interesting. The beginning of the book is actually, I, it's the part that I'm telling you about, and the part that really sticks in my brain is actually, it doesn't start right at the beginning of the book. The beginning of the book is this sort of like story, because both the doctor and then the family of Luciana are immigrants in the United States. And so we follow that, like before they, come to the United States and stuff, we follow that. Which is interesting as context, but and kind of necessary in some ways, especially in order to relate to Luciana's mother and how she deals with the situation and sort of understand where she is coming from and certain traumas that lead her to react in the way that she does. So I think it's very interesting for that. But I just know that if you're reading it, that is only that first part, not the entire book is going to be that way. So yeah, that is Orpheus Builds a Girl. It is excellent. I recommend it to anyone. So yeah. Then on number two, I have another series, a comic series this time, and that is Castle in the Stars by Alex Alice. This is a historical sci-fi series. A lot of genre blends on this list now that I'm thinking about it. But so we follow. So it's basically what if humanity landed on the moon 100 years earlier than it did, and so we have um, some politics going on. It deals a lot with colonization because especially like the I'd say the third book onwards um deals with colonization as well, because then we arrive on Mars, and on Mars there are already people, and we have like 19th century people in power, and so like they can't just accept that people exist and live. No, they need to be colonized, of course. So we see that. I think it's very interesting. I really like the art style. It is absolutely stunning. Especially like the colors are so vibrant and beautiful art style. But also the story is very interesting, I think. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the seventh one, which isn't out yet, and I want it to be out because I want to read it because it's great. Like the series is great. So yeah, I highly recommend the series. I think they have English translations up until the fourth one at this moment. So yeah, really enjoyed it. It's fantastic. And then my number one favorite book of the year is The Grace of Kings, which I also own physically, but it's over there, and I don't want to get up to get it. But this is the first book in the Dandelion Dynasty, and I thought it was fantastic. It's hard to like summarize this. It is often said that this is sort of a prologue to the actual story, which I can see. It reads a little bit like a collection of interconnected short stories at times. It also reads a little bit like a history book, where in places we're like a little more detached from what's going on, but I liked that about it. I really liked the way this was written. I've been told that the rest of the series isn't written in that way, and I'm a little bit sad about that, because I actually quite enjoyed it. But so yeah, it's very epic in scope. Also very interesting, we see how this war that is going on, because it's very much a war book, but not a battle book, but just on like a bigger scale, like war, like as an overview of it, and how that leads to technological advancements, and just it is wonderful. It is great. The writing is fantastic. I am going to reread it very soon and then finish the series, because right after reading this, I hit a bit of a fantasy slump, and so I never continued on, because by the time I was like, okay, I'm going to like all the big fantasy again. I'd already agreed with some people to buddy read it this year, so I'm so excited I can finally reread this book and then continue on with the series, because it's just chef's kiss, fantastic. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it already. So yeah, that is my top 10. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've read any of these, please let me know, and let me know what you thought of them. Even if you disliked it, you can break my heart. It's fine. Um, Also, I would love to know what your favorite book of the year was, or your favorites, because I know that picking one is very hard. And yeah, I hope to see you again in another video. Bye!